Hi, everybody. Angelique Montano Breslin here from the Pelvic Health Hub. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Stephanie Park. And Stephanie Park is a perinatal coach and trainer, and we'll learn a little bit more about what that is in a moment. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us on the Pelvic Dialogue. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So maybe we can start by just chatting a little bit about what it is that you do. I know you have some specific certification when it comes to perinatal health and fitness, and and just let us know what you're passionate about.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you said, I'm a personal trainer and a group fitness instructor. And I'm also a certified pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach. I also work full-time in pharmaceuticals. I'm also a freelance violinist and a new mom to a sweet baby boy, Theodore. We call him Teddy. He's 13 weeks now. So yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, I mean, if you hear some screaming, that's probably him. He's down for a nap right now, but who knows how long he'll sleep for. But anyway, what I'm passionate about, I'm passionate about, helping people move their bodies in a way that makes them feel really strong and confident. And then in terms of my pregnancy and postpartum community, this also applies to them, right? So I'm really passionate about really educating and empowering these women to feel strong and powerful so that they can train safely and effectively during such a transformative chapter in their life. So it's really, being a pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach, it's not much different from a personal trainer. It's still a personal trainer, but specifically for someone who's pregnant or postpartum. I think there's just so many more considerations to be aware of and to be mindful of when you're training during pregnancy and postpartum. And sometimes, I think it does require, and I think it really benefits from working one-on-one with a coach.
Yes, absolutely. And being a pelvic health physiotherapist, I guess I'm a little biased, but I do see a lot of the consequences of, people that have gone through pregnancy, postpartum, have not really even realized that perhaps they should be doing something different or at a different pace in order to recover. And it's not until, later on, even years later, where they start to feel signs and symptoms of things sort of going awry. So, so I think it's really great to be able to see this population and guide them through in a really timely manner. So yeah, I think it's just amazing that that you're doing what you're doing because there are definitely some particular things that you want to be aware of as a trainer when treating this particular population. So maybe because you just sort of touched on how training this population, there are some things to take into consideration. So do you want to maybe just chat a little bit about some of the things that you would probably want to be taking note of?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, training during pregnancy and postpartum, both pregnancy and postpartum, it's more than just exercise modifications. And I think that's like an obvious first thing that you need to do. But I think working with a coach, what you would recognize is there are more strategies, I guess, related to breath and also figuring out what your tendencies are in your body, positioning, the range of motion that you're doing. So there's a lot more that goes into needing to change during these chapters. And I think sometimes you're just not aware of it. And I think a lot of times people are also told just, listen to your body, but some people don't know what to listen for, right? Yeah. And especially during pregnancy and postpartum, and what cues your body's giving you, telling you maybe you need to pull back a little bit and dial it back. But yeah, so it's not as easy as just saying, hey, just listen to your body. Yeah. Sometimes you don't know what you're listening for.
Right. It's definitely not a cookie cutter approach. That's for sure.
Exactly. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe as you mentioned, you've recently given birth to your first child. So would you mind sharing with us some of what your learnings have been so far with this particular experience?
Yeah, of course. I guess the biggest learning for me is that every baby and every mom is very different. And so I guess, let's start with a mom. Every pregnancy, every birth experience, every postpartum journey is so different woman to woman. And I think it's, you can't really compare what you're going through with someone else. Sure, you can learn and listen and just, it's more for awareness, but comparing, I think, is dangerous. It's a slippery slope, because then you expect certain things. There's an expectation when you see what other people are going through, or even body changes. And I think with social media too, seeing, someone document their bump changing week to week, and then you seeing your bump changing in a different way, I don't think that's necessarily healthy. I'm not saying it's hard to avoid it with social media. It's out there, but just being aware that, being mindful that everyone's gonna be very different. So you shouldn't compare yourself directly, mom to mom. Same thing with baby. So the way that baby will develop or do things, and they'll do it at their own pace. And that's okay. I think that's another thing. Like, it's great to have that mom community to exchange, tips and advice, but to just take it all with a grain of salt, like all advice with a grain of salt, just because how your baby is going to react to certain things, or it's going to be different. So I think that has been my biggest learning in this experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, people often will ask me prior to delivery, how long is it going to take for me to recover? And what are your thoughts on birth itself? How do you think I'm going to fare? And it's so hard to really predict. I mean, there are just so many factors to take into consideration. And like you said, everyone's healing is always different. Even if you're thinking along the lines of, a C birth versus, or cesarean birth versus a vaginal birth, right? So it's just so different from one person to the next. I totally agree with you on that.
As you said, for like the birth too, right? You could plan for a birth, but then you have a C-section birth, so that throws you off. And healing is not linear. It's different from everyone, but it's also your own path is going to go through progressions and regressions, and that's normal. So yeah, it's really true. Those questions are hard to answer. I totally agree.
Yeah. Now, would you say you're happy with what you knew going into birth and, becoming a new first-time parent?
I mean, yes, I'm very happy for the most part with this new experience of being a parent. I had some close girlfriends that luckily had kids maybe a couple months before me. So I get a lot of advice from them, and just seeing how, what their experience has been. And I mean, I took some prenatal courses and workshops and did a lot of reading, but I think the one thing is that I wish I knew more about was breastfeeding. And I think breastfeeding is really hard, because reading about it is great, but actually living it and breathing it and trying it, and you don't know how your body's going to react, right? And how it's going to take to breastfeeding, or how your baby's going to take to latching. So that was a whole new experience. I knew it was going to be hard, but I don't think I knew just how hard it was going to be. And then complications of pumping, and just, it was that, I think, was one area.
Tough and not expected, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, were there any other areas of or expectations that you had about birth and about being a new parent that pretty much birth met those expectations, or did you find that it was just completely different?
I mean, I guess expectations, I guess going into the birth itself, you definitely, you have a loose plan, right? And I think my plan was not to really have a plan, and kind of be flexible with whatever way it would need to go based on what my body was needing, what the OB was telling me I needed for the baby as well. And being flexible with knowing that, I ended up having an emergency C-section. And that's one thing, I guess, going back to one of your other questions, I wish I'd known a little bit more about the recovery of a C birth, and just, I'd never had a, major surgery, and C-section is a major abdominal surgery, and just coming off the drugs, just how drowsy I felt, how itchy I felt, I thought pre-workout was bad for the nose itching, but coming off those drugs, oh my gosh, my nose was so red. Just feeling drowsy and not really being present for the first couple hours with the baby. You're trying to be there, but that was a really hard thing, and not a lot of people talked about how they felt right after that surgery. So that was really surprising to me.
And I think it is true. It is considered a major abdominal surgery. Just like if someone were to have a tummy tuck or something like that. But I don't think the general population necessarily views a C-section as a major surgery. And I think as a result of that, many people are surprised as to what that recovery is like. And it often is a longer recovery for some folks. So, so yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand that it is actually major surgery, right?
Definitely. Yeah, it's probably a messaging I would love to see changed, and talk a little bit more about, and just your whole core. That's another thing, like expectation. I thought I'd be pretty independent. Like, I knew the recovery process was going to be long, but I didn't realize how dependent I was going to be, let's say on my partner or my husband. If I'm lying down with the baby, breastfeeding, needing to get up, I can't do that on my own. It took me weeks for me to be able to come up, like, especially holding a load, like with the baby. And so that was, not what I expected, for sure, because I'm very am and was very independent. And keep in mind, after surgery like that, your core really feels like a jelly dead zone. No muscles to get up. So that was surprising, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a very active person, even prior to pregnancy. So I can see how people can get frustrated, especially if you're very athletic and you're very active, and all of a sudden you don't have the control that you used to have through your core and through your body as you normally would. So yeah, like just a simple act of getting up into a lying from lying to sitting is difficult.
I mean, without the baby, sure, like you learn how to roll, nothing, but with the baby, you can't sit up. That's really
How long did you find that sort of took before you started to get a bit more mobile?
I would say, honestly, like after 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, I would say that's when I started to kind of feel like I could get myself up a little bit more. But in those first month, no way. Not. And in the middle of the night, I'd be doing the feeds, and my husband would be sleeping, and so I'd have to get him to have his ringer on so I could phone him. So again, sleeping on the couch.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Well, that's the advantage of technology, right?
True.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I wanted to ask you too, I mean, as being a perinatal coach and a trainer, and obviously being very active yourself, can you tell us a little bit about the approach that you use to help parents to be, or new parents and athletes, if they want to return to activities and exercise?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first focus, like as a PMPA coach, is not only physical, but also mental elements of an athlete's training during pregnancy and after birth. And so I guess very active and like high performing athletes, I find they're so used to, pushing through challenging times. And for them, it's not natural to dial back and to self-regulate. So I think sometimes they need a coach to kind of help them go through this mindset shift. And that actually I find really starts in during training, during pregnancy. Because during pregnancy, people are going through this like change and this loss of identity and strength, and they have a fear of losing their strength and ability during this time. And they are like desperately holding on to, trying to maintain some kind of normalcy during this period. And I think sometimes the coaches, as my role as a coach is there to kind of give themselves permission to not maintain and to relinquish control, and only control what they can control during this really transformative period of their life. So yeah, I think first and foremost, it's a mindset shift, and it's just the way I communicate with my clients. I think it's a way of the messaging that we, as a coach, I put out as well, that it's really training for resilience and adaptability during this period. And I think that's postpartum, it's huge too. You have to train for adaptability. And I think also really emphasizing that, I mentioned this earlier, healing, it's not linear, right? And it's going to be different for everyone. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not a one size fits all. So again, I think that's why there's a benefit in working one-on-one with someone during this period, because the way your body's going to react and how you train is going to be different based on what you did prior to pregnancy, right? And the different symptoms you feel, and how to feel for those symptoms. So I think that another thing is the way I like to train is also by trial and feedback, not necessarily error, but really working to communicate and see, like doing like a symptom check-in, like what are you feeling when you do this certain movement? And again, just bring more awareness to the different symptoms that they can experience. and then also a conservative progression, so progressive overload approach. So, you know, learning how to walk again before you run, or learning how to do body weight squats and then adding the load before you start moving that to like a plyometric movement.
Right.
But again, it's really dependent on like what the person's goals are, right? And where they see themselves going as well.
Right.
So that's kind of my approach when I work with people wanting to return to exercise.
Yeah. And I think it's really, it's so important taking that sort of progressive and gradual approach, especially postpartum. I think we need to get away from the notion of, okay, it's 6 weeks postpartum. I've gotten the clear from my primary care practitioner to get back to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I mean, it did take 9-10 months of changes in your own body as well as baby. I think we have to realize that it's going to be a gradual approach to return to everything after.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks it's great. I mean, there are a lot of people that feel a ton better, but I've had individuals that have returned to running, you know, if that's their goal, within, you know, the first 12 to 15 weeks. And then I've had others that we don't even go there until almost a year postpartum.
Yeah.
So it's really super individualized, and it's so important to have somebody like yourself sort of coaching people through that.
Yeah, it's true. Because if you don't, I find again, people tend to push a little bit too much, and you know, they might not be able to, their body will react, and then that might set them back even further, right? So it's very, very individualized, and I agree. You know, definitely gradual, a lot slower.
Yeah.
That's why you have someone there to kind of regulate you a bit, right? I think people think that they can jump right back into like lifting super heavy, but there is a gradual rebuild that you really need to respect, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I guess that's, you know, a little bit of what I would like to see change as far as that 6 week, you know, time period postpartum. But how about for yourself? Like, what would you like to see happen or change in the world of perinatal and pelvic health?
I love this question. I think this is like the dream world. What do you want to see, right?
Yeah.
I would really, first of all, just want to see more awareness and education around pelvic health, especially from a younger age. I don't remember, like for myself, in high school, and we, you know, in sex ed, they didn't really teach you about, you know, your pelvic floor, the pelvic health, or what happens. Yes, you learn about how you get pregnant and, you know, how it develops, but the after, like what happens after that, what happens to the woman's body after that. I would love to see that, you know, change for girls at a younger age, so that they're just more aware and there's more education around it. But also just hearing women now, new moms, say the phrase, you know, oh, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know that you could experience incontinence. I didn't know that was common. Like, I wish, my heart breaks when I hear that, you know. I wish that I really hope that there's more awareness around that kind of stuff. And for example, let's use incontinence as an example. Sure, it's common, but I also would love for women not to think that that's something that they have to live with once, you know. I really would love for the messaging to be, hey, there's a way to improve this. There are ways to manage your incontinence. Right. So, again, I think that just goes with people talking, like just a different messaging and just more awareness around the different pelvic health symptoms and things that you get after being pregnant, and what is common, not normal. I think there's a difference in the wording that we need to use for that.
Oh, totally. And it is so common, right? I mean, if we look at the research, 1 in 3 females will struggle with incontinence or bladder leakage at some point in their lifetime. So it is very common. And so people do think that it's normal, but oh my goodness, there's so many things you can do. Like, how many times have I had people come into clinic with bladder leakage and they've been able to resolve it 100%. So there's definitely hope. And yes, so I think the messaging needs to change, and I think it is changing. So it's great that way.
And just also eliminating fear around certain things. I think the biggest fear one is diastasis, right? People have huge fear around, oh my God, my abs separating, or they think that their abs are breaking apart, tearing apart. And I think that is, I wish that we could get away from there being so much fear around that, because again, the data shows 100% of women, especially in their third trimester, will experience diastasis.
Yeah.
And again, it's very common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it just, the wording around that too, I think
Mm-hmm.
is super important to change.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
All right. No, like people like you out there, it will change. So.
Yeah. Well, so I have a couple more things I would love if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I also just want to see a shift, I guess, in the messaging around training during pregnancy. I think there's that phrase, just do what you did pre-pregnancy. And I think that's a really dangerous phrase, because on one end of this pendulum, there's, it discourages women who haven't trained prior to pregnancy to start training during pregnancy.
Right.
I think, if you want to train, for that instance, I think it's really important to examine the why they want to work out during pregnancy. If they want to work out during pregnancy because they think that that'll help them bounce back to their body, maybe that's not the right reason to do it. If they just want a healthy pregnancy, then I think we should totally encourage that and support it. But then on the other end of the pendulum, when you say just do what you did pre-pregnancy, for those, those athletes, they're used to pushing, and they'll think that means, oh, I need to maintain my strength throughout my pregnancy. So I think that messaging is also very, it's a difficult one. It's a challenge, it's not the right message we want to be giving. So I think, again, eliminating the fear around training during pregnancy is something that I would love to see. And then for pelvic floor physiotherapy, I would love to see just more integration, I think, of pelvic floor physiotherapy being an integral part of a woman's postpartum recovery, and just seeing more of a partnership with OBs and, pelvic floor therapists to make sure that, when you go in for your 6-week checkup with your OB, it's immediately the next step is also to book something with a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Even now, I know it's gotten better, but even now I still talk to some women and people don't know who, what a pelvic physiotherapist does. So
yeah, it's definitely getting better, but I totally agree. It really should be a very streamlined process, right? It just should be something that happens, and it can help prevent so many things too. So pregnancy being like one of the biggest risk factors to developing pelvic health issues, right? So it just makes sense. And with regards to training and exercising through pregnancy, yeah, absolutely, I think it's a really important piece. And I think there might still be the notion out there that people think I shouldn't exercise because I am pregnant. But if we look at the obstetrical guidelines with regards to exercise during pregnancy, it is safe, and it's actually quite encouraged. So again, hopefully that myth or that messaging about not exercising during pregnancy is abolished. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Did you get it all in? I didn't want to cut you off there. Okay, awesome. So Steph, if anybody would like to get a hold of you and if they'd like to connect with you directly, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can find me on Instagram. I'm at SteffiP, or I actually have a new website, steffparkfitness.com.
Nice.
So they can find me there as well. There's a consult form that you can fill out, and a direct link to my email there. So
amazing. And I'll definitely put that website in the description for anybody that wants to check out Stephanie's new website. And I have one more question for you, Stephanie. And I ask this of everybody that comes onto the Pelvic Dialogue. And I probably know the answer already, but what would you say is your favorite self-care activity?
I mean, I'm sure you can guess it. Movement and working out is my favorite self-care activity. But if I had to pick a second, I would say, and I haven't done this since giving birth, but I love a good skincare routine. So I love a great bubble bath with a face mask, reality TV playing, and eating ice cream. So that's my self-care routine.
That sounds amazing. I'm gonna have to try that myself.
Today's do that again, but
well, make sure you have ice cream. Today's a perfect day to have ice cream. It's 35 degrees out there, something crazy like that. So Great. Okay, Steph, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all your knowledge and your experiences with us.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, and hopefully maybe we'll see you again on the hub in the future.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, have a great day, Steph.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.